On Monday night, I went to the general election hustings in my constituency, and it was the second time I'd put myself through the torture of listening to these candidates put their positions out and then take questions from the audience, a bit like Question Time on the BBC. And on Friday, I went on Friday, and the current MP wasn't in attendance, but there was only about 60 people there, and the atmosphere was really quite kind of dampened down, if you like. But last night there was 250 people in the audience, and they were clearly partisan as well. So there was a bit of shouting here and there, some fairly tough questioning of the candidates, and kind of a quite an excitable atmosphere. So I was kind of curious to see how these things work, because I've never got involved in party politics, and I've never been to hustings before, even though I know what they're like. But I went really not listening to the candidates. What was more important to me, I was just trying to gauge how the audience felt, because I live in a bubble. I consume whatever I want from media, legacy and new media, on YouTube and all the newspapers and so on. And I've got kind of my understanding of what's going on and what I think what people feel about it. But it's all filtered by the journalists and the commentators. But this was real people in our neighborhood all getting together and clearly expressing opinions on how they were moaning and groaning or clapping, and it was really quite fascinating. But one of the things that came up a couple of times last night, but it comes up time and time again when you hear politicians make their pitch, is that you need to trust us. Trust us, don't trust the other guys. And I thought, well, yeah, trust. Now, it reminded me of something as important that I learned some time ago, and actually it could be really useful for people who are contemplating who they're going to vote for and whether they can actually trust these politicians and the promises that they make. So let me just go back to the bulk of my career. One of the things that I was responsible for was for leading teams in business on how they should manage third-party suppliers. And stay with me here. One of the things that people don't particularly understand is that when you're the customer, a big corporation, and you are buying services and products from third-party suppliers, one of the things people don't really understand is that the performance of these suppliers is highly variable. Just because you're the customer doesn't mean to say that the supplier is going to dance to your tune. So you learn to all sorts of techniques about persuasion and coercion, sometimes being occasionally quite aggressive, in order to get suppliers to perform the way that you need them to perform, so that their inputs to your business come at the right time, at the right quality, and you get what you need in order for you and your business to be successful. So we call it supplier management or supplier relationship management. And was it the 90s? I came across some research that was done by a Japanese academic or researcher called Mari Sako. And what she did, she codified what we should be thinking about when we consider trust. And over the years, I've just kept coming back to that model. And I think it's really appropriate and useful to reflect on this model and apply this model when it comes to thinking about our politicians. So let me tell you about trust. Trust, we tend to believe in trust as almost as if we like the other person or a party, or in the case of my professional career, what we thought of a supplier. And it normally is around whether we kind of get on with them. Are they the sort of people that we like, could imagine spending time with in the pub or on a walk or in a discussion? Do we think that these people are predisposed to like us? Are they people like us? And what we think about those people is that they are, when we think about whether we like people or not, that's considered to be goodwill trust. Do we have an understanding of whether these are the sort of people that we would bring into our circle of friends? Do they have a goodwill in mind when they're making promises to us? Do they want to look out for us? Anyway, goodwill trust. That's one of the pillars of trust. And there are three. So, do they like us? The second one is, do they keep their promises? And Sacco considered this to be contractual trust. So when the other party says something to us about what they are going to do we consider that to be reliable? Are they going to carry out those promises? And the third pillar, the final pillar, is competence trust. They might like us, they might endeavour to keep their promises, but do they have the skills and the capacity to actually deliver on those? Do they have competence? So, for example, if we're thinking about, say, a child, does the child like us? Well, we hope, especially if we're our parents or our friends with that young person. Do we think that they keep their promises? Well, they might. But do they have the skills necessary to deliver on those promises? And for most of the time, young people haven't got sufficient life experience in order for us to believe that they're competent and have the experience and skills to do it. And this is why most of our politicians are middle-aged people, because to be successful in the political sphere, there's a credibility associated with age and experience. So it's just the way it is, why young people find it difficult to get voted in. And it's part of that, of course, is people with experience, normally the middle-aged and the elderly, are most likely to vote. So they're looking for people who will have got a similar degree of life experience that they have. So, 3 pillars: goodwill trust, contractual trust, and competence trust. So when you look at our politicians, and when you're looking at politicians and thinking about who am I going to vote for, if you want to honestly say to yourself that I trust this person, what the Sacco research says is that any doubts we have over trust can only be overcome if the candidate fulfills those 3 components of trust: goodwill, contractual, and competence. So let's think about the politicians that we have and what we're faced with here. So in the UK here, we got this general election that's happening on Thursday, tomorrow. And when you look at the major parties and the leaders, let's just look at the leaders, because the leaders is kind of the easiest thing to contemplate. So we've got the existing government, the Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak. So how does he stack up? Well, this is kind of my assessment of whether I or other people kind of trust them. So firstly, goodwill trust. Does Rishi Sunak have our best interests at heart? Well, he seems a nice guy. He seems clever. He's got a degree of empathy. He speaks well. Is he really committed to delivering on behalf of the British people? Maybe I'll give him a pass. Maybe I think that he does. That his heart's possibly in the right place. Does he keep his promises? Well, he's leading a government, or he has been leading a government, that has very obviously not delivered on the promises that the party has made at each general election, or indeed the famous Brexit referendum in 2016. So I think Sunak scores poorly on contractual trust. I don't think the Tory party, Conservative Party, has delivered on its promises. And thirdly, competence trust. Do I, or should we, believe that Rishi Sunak and the Conservative Party is competent to deliver on the promises that it's made to the electorate? I don't think so. They keep banging on about this Rwandan policy, but they can't get it in. So even though that they can say, oh, we forced through, or we were about to force through a change in the law to enable us to do that, we know that they can't overcome the European Court of Human Rights and the judiciary, who will apply the law related to that particular court. I don't think that the Tory party has the competence to overcome that hurdle. Are they good and competent at managing the economy? Well, political parties only have limited sway on the economy. And now that the Bank of England, the central bank, is independent, then it can't even manipulate interest rates in order to drive economic growth and general financial well-being of people in general. And are they competent at managing foreign policy? Well, I'm not so sure. There's a lot of bad things going on in the world and a lot of promises made by our politicians about how they can intervene and manage Middle Eastern conflict, or conflict between the Great Bear and the Ukraine. And so it's hard to say whether, actually it's not hard to say, I don't think the Tory party, the Conservative Party, can be trusted in the round. They might want to do the right thing, they might promise to do the right thing, but they're not capable of doing the right thing. So let's flip it onto the other side, the main party, and the most likely winner of the election tomorrow, and that's the Labour Party and Keir Starmer. So, same measures, goodwill. Does Keir Starmer and the Labour Party genuinely believe, or can they be trusted to want the best for us, for the population, the middle classes and the working classes? Well, I think the long-term purpose of the Labour Party to look after people who are, shall we say, the disadvantaged, to look out for working people. Keir Starmer, in the last 2 or 3 weeks, has not been able to define what working people are, not effectively anyway. So I don't think the Labour Party has lost its way in terms of being the voice of the disadvantaged in our society. So I'm not convinced that they passed the goodwill test. No, I don't think, and I'm not sure that we can actually think that Keir Starmer and the Labour Party genuinely want what's good for the British people. So goodwill trust, again, scores pretty low. Contractual trust, well, it's hard to trust, or it's hard to judge the Labour Party because they've been out of power for 14 years. Have they made promises that they've not kept? As I say, hard to judge. Maybe they haven't been given the opportunity. The Brexit vote was, in a sense, when you have a referendum, you have a contract with the populace, the voting public, to say that whatever you say, you decide we'll follow through. We'll administer that decision on your behalf. As I've already said, I think Starmer's got a shaky record in that regard. But beyond that, it's hard to say, hard to be too critical. So let's give them 5 out of 10. Is that they're untested when it comes to delivering on promises. And thirdly, on competence trust. Does the Labour Party look to you to be a competent set of individuals or a collective that we have the confidence and can trust them to actually be able to do what they say they'd like to do? Well, of course, the world's very complicated and it's a bloody difficult job for any government to really steer society in a way that it says it would like to. It's just such a tough job. So I'm not really convinced that the Labour Party, in fact, this goes for the others as well, that they've really genuinely got the competence to deliver. So they score pretty low in that regard as well. And of course, having been an observer of politics for a very long time, the current crop of politicians on both sides of the house look pretty mediocre to me. So I'm not too impressed on the competence front either. So who else is out there? The Liberal Democrats. Goodwill? No, I don't think the Liberal Democrats are necessarily working on behalf of the British public. I think their strength in electoral terms is concentrated in certain parts of the country, which is typically the south and the southwest, which kind of rules them out of being in touch with people in the Midlands and the north. So I think their power and influence is too concentrated for them to score highly on goodwill trust. And they're not likely to form the government, although they have been in coalition after 2010. Contractual trust, well, they famously, as a party, made the promise not to raise student tuition fees in 2010. And then, as part of the coalition agreement, they reneged on that and they made a big thing of it. And now student fees are, $9,500 a year. So, keeping their promises, the best example we can remember is that they weren't very good at that. So they would score pretty low on that in that regard. And then, competence. Reasonably competent. I wouldn't have said they're incompetent. I think traditionally, and when I'm thinking traditionally in the last 20 years or whatever, they've had some decent politicians in there, very capable people. But again, largely untested. It's hard to give any of these parties an assessment which said, yeah, these people can be trusted to deliver. So then you end up with a party that's come out of nowhere, Reform, who were represented at the hustings on Monday, and their goodwill, well, again, hard to say. I think they make a big thing, too big a thing, of this immigration argument. It's an issue, and it has a knock-on effect on public services and housing and all that sort of stuff. So there's some legitimate discussion to be had on all of that. But they make too much of it for me. I think what you could say, if you gave them a degree of the benefit of the doubt, you'd say that they are in favour of looking after the interests of the people who currently live in the country, people who are born here and or been here for some time, versus people who have are coming more recently. So they've been quite explicit about supporting people who've been here for a while. So that's goodwill trust. Keeping their promises. Again, they've never been in power, other than in the previous incarnation, being in the European Parliament. So, did the leader Nigel Farage and the party, as it existed then, keep their promises? Well, they probably did, but they're untested in government here, so it's hard to say whether they're going to do. Even if they got any influence in the running of the country post-election, whether they're actually going to make a difference. But again, that's a pretty neutral 5 out of 10, I would think. And then competence. Well, one of the things that I would say is of note with the representatives I've seen, including the local representative here of the Reform Party, is that because they're not MPs, they're not politicians, they do have experience outside of politics, running businesses or running charities and so on and so forth. I think there is a degree of credibility that can be assigned to them based on the fact that they're not part of the political machine in the way that the established parties are. So they've had to survive running businesses or working in business, which would, for me, would give them a slightly higher score in terms of potential competence. Can they be trusted on the competence front? Maybe a smidgen more than the others. But in the round, it's hard to judge them either. So, I don't know how I'm going to vote tomorrow. For me, it's like, well, if trust is the big thing that they want us to base our voting preferences on, I think you can see from what I've just been saying, is that even though this methodology that came from Sacco it can be applied, none of the parties or the party's leaders score highly in terms of overall trust. And it just reinforces a point that I've made before, and that politicians and their leaders are not our parents. And we are not their children. We are better than just deciding which side are we on, are they on, or do we support that side or the other, if you get what I mean. We're better than that. And I expect politicians to be able to step up and then demonstrate to us that when we talk about trust, that they should be much more realistic about what they can deliver and what influence they have on society. So I think there's a thing that underpins credibility, and that is not over-promising. Don't promise more than you can deliver. And all our politicians do that every day of the week. So for the time being, this cynic is going to sign off. Happy voting, everyone. See you next time.